I'm Gloria, a 68-year-old widow who poured my life into raising my children after their father passed. So when they called me their own mother, too much trouble, and locked me in the attic, it wasn't just cruel, it was a betrayal. Their mistake? Thinking I was too old and too broken to fight back. They wanted me silenced. I made sure their shame would echo for years. Welcome back to Granny's Truth. If you're new here, thank you for joining a community of wisdom, survival, and second chances. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. We love seeing this family spread across the world. Now let's continue. 68 years I've walked this earth, and for more than 30 of them I walked it as a widow. My husband Robert snatched away too soon, leaving me with our two precious children, Andre and Kayla. He was 10, she just 6. I remember standing at his graveside, their small hands clutching mine, and vowing that I'd move heaven and earth to give them everything. And I did. I worked my fingers to the bone as a hospital administrator, juggling shifts, school plays, and a household that always seemed to need more than I had to give. This house, Robert's dream, became our fortress, a place I filled with love, discipline, and the smell of baking, praying it would be enough. Andre, my firstborn, now 40, a sharp-suited manager in some soulless finance firm, seemed to think enough had a very short shelf life. Anne Monique, his wife of 15 years, 39 and perpetually dissatisfied, made no secret of her belief that my enough was now woefully inadequate. Kayla, my baby at 36, a graphic designer with her father's gentle eyes, seemed to drift in their wake, her own voice increasingly drowned out by their louder, more demanding ones. Lately, the air in my own home had grown thick with their disrespect. Sunday dinners, a tradition I clung to, had become a stage for their casual cruelty. Really, Mom, this old china again? Monique would sigh, flicking a dismissive glance at the plates Robert and I had chosen on our honeymoon. It's so quaint. Andre and I were saying when we eventually update this place, we'll need something much more contemporary for proper entertaining. Update this place? I'd ask, my voice tighter than I intended. Andre would jump in, not meeting my eye, already carving the roast with an impatient hand. Well, Mom, let's be realistic. This house is too big for you. We're just thinking practically. It needs a complete overhaul to be worth anything on the market or for us to actually use it properly. His emphasis on us felt like a deliberate shove. Even my requests for small helps were met with exaggerated sighs and eye rolls. Mom, the faucet again? Andre would groan as if I'd asked him to rebuild the plumbing from scratch. You really need to get a handyman on retainer. Or better yet, move into one of those senior living places where they handle all this stuff. You're not getting any younger, you know. Monique would then chime in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. He's right, Gloria. You deserve to be comfortable, not worrying about leaky taps and overgrown gardens. This yard is a jungle. It's an embarrassment to the neighborhood, frankly. My jungle was a riot of roses Robert had planted, a testament to a love she couldn't comprehend. An embarrassment? The only embarrassment was her lack of grace. Kayla, bless her heart, would try sometimes. Oh, Mom's roses are beautiful, Monique. But her defense was weak, easily quashed by a sharp look from her sister-in-law or a dismissive wave from Andre. More often, Kayla would just offer a strained, now, let's not upset Mom, as if I were the one causing the problem by simply existing in their ambitious paths. Sometimes she'd even echo their sentiments in a softer tone. Maybe a smaller place would be easier for you, Mom. Less to worry about. The words coming from her were like little paper cuts, not as brutal as Andre's blows or Monique's stilettos, but they bled all the same. The gaslighting became their favorite sport. Mom, you said last week you wanted us to clear out the attic, Monique would declare coolly when I found her sifting through Robert's old things. I had said no such thing. The attic was my sanctuary of memories. Your memory is getting a bit fuzzy, isn't it, dear? She'd add, patting my hand with a condescension that made my skin crawl. Andre treated me like a child, or worse, an inconvenient piece of furniture. If I tried to share a story from my day, he'd openly scroll through his phone, muttering without hearing a word. If I expressed an opinion on current events, he'd often cut me off with, yeah, well, things are different now, Mom. You wouldn't really understand. He even started referring to my home as the property in conversations with Monique, right in front of me, as if I were already a ghost. Their greed was becoming a palpable thing, a hungry presence in the room. They weren't just eyeing the house. They were mentally refurnishing it, planning extensions, their voices low and conspiratorial until I walked in, then falling into an abrupt, guilty silence. I tried to stand my ground to remind them of who I was, of what this family was built on. "This house is full of your father's memories, Andre," I said one day, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. "It's my home, and I am perfectly capable of managing it and myself." Andre had the audacity to chuckle. "Oh, Mom, don't get emotional. We're just being practical. Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills, does it? And let's face it, you're not exactly in your prime. We have to think about the future, our future." He glanced at Monique, who nodded in smug agreement. Someone has to be the responsible adult here. The implication that I, Gloria, who had single-handedly raised him and his sister, who had managed a demanding career and a household for 3 decades, was not a responsible adult, was a slap in the face. Their rudeness wasn't just careless anymore. It was calculated, designed to undermine me, to wear me down. I saw the cold ambition in my son's eyes, the avarice in my daughter-in-law's, and the frightened compliance in my own daughter's. A chilling premonition began to form. They weren't just impatient or thoughtless. They were actively working towards something, a future they were designing without me, or rather with me conveniently out of the picture. The love I had poured out so freely felt like it had turned to poison in their veins. And I, their mother, was beginning to feel like a stranger in my own life, a problem they were eager to solve. The following Friday, Monique breezed into my kitchen, not with a customary greeting, but with an air of someone taking inventory. Andre trailed behind her, looking unusually shifty. "Mom," Monique announced, her voice overly bright, "we've decided your lovely home is just perfect for a little pre-charity gala reception Andre is hosting for some very important clients tomorrow night. Intimate, just a few key people. You won't even have to lift a finger." I stared at her, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "A party? Here? Monique, you didn't even ask me." My house, a place of quiet comfort, suddenly felt invaded by their presumptuous plans. "And Andre, important clients? You usually use that sterile club downtown for such things." Andre waved a dismissive hand. "Oh," Monique thought, "a more personal touch was needed, Mom. More upscale. Don't worry your head about it. We'll handle everything." Worry my head? I set my cup down, a tremor starting in my hand. "This is still my home, Andre. I decide who comes into it. And I'm not up for a party." Monique let out an exaggerated, patronizing sigh. "Gloria, please don't be difficult. It's just for a few hours. Think of it as helping Andre's career. Besides," she added, her eyes flicking around my kitchen with barely concealed disdain, "it'll give us a chance to see how the space could work with a more sophisticated flow." Their sheer audacity left me speechless for a moment. They weren't asking, they were telling. My objections were treated as the ramblings of a senile old woman. The argument that followed was short and brutal. My voice, usually firm, was drowned out by Andre's booming insistence and Monique's sharp, cutting remarks about my being unsupportive and stuck in the past. Kayla, when I called her later hoping for an ally, just murmured, "Oh, Mom, just let them have their party. It's easier than fighting them, you know how they get." Easier for whom, Kayla? The next morning, Saturday, as Monique directed caterers and florists who seemed to materialize out of thin air, transforming my living room into something cold and impersonal, I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. I was moving a small vase of my late husband Robert's favorite roses from the coffee table. Monique had declared them drab, when my foot caught slightly on the edge of the rug. It was a tiny stumble, a momentary loss of balance that I corrected almost instantly. But Monique, who had been watching me like a hawk, gasped dramatically. "Mother Gloria, are you all right? Oh, you nearly took a terrible fall." Andre rushed over, his face a mask of exaggerated concern that didn't fool me for a second. "Mom, you see, this is what we've been worried about. This big house, all these things to trip over. You're not safe on your own when you're like this." "Like what?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I just stumbled, Andre. I'm perfectly fine." No, you need to rest," Monique insisted, her hand on my arm surprisingly strong. "Somewhere quiet where you won't be underfoot with all the preparations. And where you won't risk another fall." Her eyes met Andre's in a brief, almost imperceptible glance. "The attic, perhaps. It's out of the way. You can lie down. We'll bring you up some tea." The attic. My blood ran cold. It was dusty, filled with forgotten things, and the stairs were steep and narrow. The attic? Don't be ridiculous, Monique. I'm not going up there. Mom, it's for your own good, Andre said, his voice taking on that firm, patronizing tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. We can't have you injuring yourself with all these important people here. We'd never forgive ourselves. He and Monique began to gently but inexorably steer me towards the attic stairs. Kayla appeared then, her face pale, her eyes wide with a flicker of, was it fear? Andre, Monique, maybe this isn't a good idea, she began, her voice barely a whisper. Kayla, darling, don't you start, Monique said sharply, not even looking at her. We know what's best for your mother. She needs a quiet place to rest so she doesn't get agitated and fall again. My protests, my growing alarm were ignored. With a horrible sense of unreality, I found myself being ushered up the narrow stairs. The air grew colder, dustier. Andre opened the attic door, revealing the shadowy, cluttered space. There you go, Mom, he said almost cheerily. Nice and peaceful. We'll check on you later. Before I could fully comprehend what was happening, before I could unleash the scream that was building in my chest, they guided me inside, stepped back out, and I heard the click. Not just the click of the old latch, but another, more definitive sound. The sound of a key turning in the lock they must have installed just for this purpose. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at my throat. Andre, wait, let me out. This isn't funny. I rattled the doorknob. Locked. I pounded on the heavy wooden door. What do you think you're doing? My voice was a raw shriek. No answer. Just the distant, muffled sounds of their voices downstairs, then the faint strains of music starting up. For 2 terrifying days and nights, that attic was my prison. The first few hours were a blur of disbelief and fury. I screamed until my throat was raw, pounded until my fists were bruised, but my prison was solid, my jailers deaf to my pleas. There was no tea, no one checking on me. They had left a single dusty bottle of water and a packet of dry crackers on an old trunk, a cruel afterthought. The small, grimy window offered no escape, only a view of the treetops. The nights were the worst, cold seeping into my bones from the bare floorboards, strange shadows dancing in the moonlight, every creak of the old house sounding like a footstep, a threat. Humiliation burned through me hotter than the anger. My own children. My son, my daughter, the daughter-in-law I had tried to welcome. They had done this to me, their mother, Gloria, the woman who had sacrificed everything. Treated me like unwanted rubbish, locked away and forgotten so they could entertain their important guests in my home. Sometime on Saturday evening, the sounds of their party drifted up. Laughter, clinking glasses, the thumping bass of music I didn't recognize. Each burst of merriment was a fresh stab of betrayal. I was up here, cold, alone, terrified, while they celebrated below in my living room, using my things, my life as their stage. The depth of their deceit, their calculated cruelty, settled upon me like the attic dust, heavy and suffocating. They hadn't just wanted me out of the way for a weekend. They wanted to erase me, to silence me, to prove to themselves and the world that I truly was just too much trouble. And in the darkness of that attic, with the mocking sounds of their revelry below, a new, terrifying thought began to take root. What if they never let me out? The dawn of the 3rd day in that wretched attic brought with it a chilling clarity. The distant sounds of my children cleaning up after their disgusting party, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of their voices, now devoid of any forced gaiety, had faded with the night. I was still locked in, still cold, still achingly hungry, the single bottle of water long empty, the crackers a distant memory. But the initial terror and raw panic had begun to recede, replaced by a cold, simmering rage and a desperate need to survive, not just physically but with my spirit intact. They thought they could break me, erase me. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. It was then, as I sat huddled in a moth-eaten armchair Robert had stored up here years ago, that a flicker of memory ignited in the fog of my despair. Robert's old emergency phone. He'd kept one of those ancient brick-like cell phones in a metal box with some of his army mementos, convinced it was more reliable than the fancy new gadgets. He'd charged it occasionally, just in case. After he passed, I'd packed the box away up here, unable to part with those remnants of his life. Hope, a dangerous, fragile thing, fluttered in my chest. I fumbled in the dim light filtering through the grimy window, my stiff fingers pulling at dusty boxes, a prayer on my lips. And there was the metal box. My heart leaped. Inside, nestled amongst metals and old letters, was the phone. I pressed the power button, holding my breath. The screen flickered, then miraculously came to life, showing 2 bars of battery. Enough. Just enough. My fingers, clumsy with cold and urgency, dialed Mrs. Henderson's number. She lived across the street, a kind, sensible woman, a friend since Andre and Kayla were small. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Martha? Is that you, dear?" she asked, likely surprised to see an unknown number. I'd used her first name as a code between us for years if I ever needed her discreetly. "Yes, Eleanor," I whispered, using her code name for me, my voice raspy. "It's Gloria. I think there might be a bit of a problem over here. Funny smell, like gas maybe? I'm a little confused and I can't seem to get Andre or the children's attention. Could you possibly just pop over and see if everything's all right on the outside?" I kept my voice deliberately weak, a little quavering, suggestive of an old woman's confusion and fear. A gas leak was something no one would ignore. There was a pause, then Martha's voice, sharp with concern. "A gas smell? Gloria, you stay put if you can. Don't touch anything. I'm calling the gas company and I'll be right over." Relief washed over me, so potent it nearly buckled my knees. She'd understood. She hadn't questioned. Now I just had to wait. And prepare. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably no more than 20 minutes later when I heard the commotion downstairs. Martha's firm, no-nonsense voice, then the deeper tones of what sounded like emergency responders, and finally Andre's raised, flustered tones, laced with a false concern that made my stomach churn. Mother, are you up there? We were so worried." Then the sound of the key in the lock, a sound that now signified both my imprisonment and my liberation. The door creaked open and Andre stood there, Monique hovering behind him, their faces a carefully constructed mask of shocked relief. Kayla, pale and wide-eyed, peered around them. "Mom." "Oh, thank heavens!" Andre exclaimed, rushing towards me with outstretched arms I had no intention of falling into. "Mrs. Henderson said you smelled gas. We were having a clear-out after the get-together, and we thought you were resting so peacefully in your room. You must have wandered up here and the door must have latched. Oh, we've been frantic." Monique chimed in, her voice oozing saccharine sympathy. "Gloria, darling, you gave us such a fright. Locking yourself in the attic. Are you all right? You look so frail." I allowed myself to sway, leaning heavily against a dusty trunk, my hand fluttering to my head. "Oh, Andre, Monique, what happened? I felt a bit dizzy yesterday morning after my little stumble. You said I should rest up here, didn't you? Where it was quiet." I looked around, feigning utter bewilderment. Did I fall asleep for a long time? Their eyes met, a quick shared glance of, was it relief? Triumph? They thought their problem had solved itself, that I was now too confused, too addled to remember the truth, to challenge their narrative. Kayla rushed forward then, her face a mess of conflicting emotions. "Oh, Mama, I was so worried," she cried, helping me to my feet. Her hands were trembling. Was it guilt or fear of being exposed? The emergency responders, after a cursory check, declared there was no gas leak, a fiction I had created, my first act of defiance. Martha Henderson looked at me with sharp, knowing eyes over Andre and Monique's fussing, but she played along, expressing her relief that I was found safe, albeit confused. My children, my jailers, were now my solicitous caretakers, full of apologies for the misunderstanding, for not checking on me more thoroughly while I was resting so soundly. They cooed and clucked, their insincerity a suffocating blanket. I played my part to perfection. I was weak, disoriented, my memory of the weekend conveniently patchy. I allowed them to fuss over me, to settle me back in my own bedroom, the one that no longer felt like mine. That night, after they had finally left, after showering me with promises to take much better care of me from now on, the true Gloria emerged from the shell of the frail, confused old woman I had pretended to be. The rage was still there, a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but it was now accompanied by a steely resolve. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my love for weakness, my trust for senility. They had locked me away like an animal. And they would pay. My mind, far from being fuzzy, was crystal clear. I needed more than just my word against theirs. I needed their own words, their own voices to condemn them. The seed of a plan, daring and dangerous, began to sprout. I needed a way to record them. The next day, feigning a desire to keep my mind active with technology, as Monique had once so condescendingly suggested, I asked Kayla to help me order a few things online, simple items. Among them, slipped in as an afterthought, was a small, discreet voice-activated digital recorder. "For my doctor's appointments, dear," I'd said, giving her a wavering smile. "So I don't forget his instructions." Kayla, eager to appease her guilty conscience, had readily agreed. The recorder arrived a few days later. I spent hours practicing with it, learning its quirks, its range. My children thought they had a more manageable, more broken mother on their hands. They had no idea I was meticulously preparing for war, and they themselves were about to hand me all the ammunition I would ever need. The weeks that followed my attic ordeal, as Monique so delicately termed it, were a masterclass in deception, my deception. I became a ghost in my own home, a fragile echo of the vibrant woman I once was. My movements were slower, my voice softer, my gaze often distant, as if struggling to grasp the present. I forgot names, misplaced my glasses frequently, often right on top of my head, much to their eye-rolling amusement, and drifted off during their self-important monologues. It was a demeaning role to play, a constant swallowing of pride, but every condescending pat on my hand, every patronizing smile they exchanged over my confused head, only fueled the icy resolve in my heart. That tiny voice-activated recorder became my closest confidant, my silent weapon, always tucked away in my apron pocket or nestled amongst the yarn in my knitting basket. Andre was the first I targeted. My son, the apple of my eye for so long, now a man whose arrogance was his most defining trait. I waited for an afternoon when Monique was out at one of her essential luncheons. I found him in Robert's old study, already measuring walls, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Andre, dear," I began, my voice deliberately quavering as I leaned on the doorframe. "My mind is still so jumbled from that weekend. That attic business." I pressed a hand to my temple. "You were trying to protect me, weren't you? From hurting myself after my little fall." He puffed up just as I knew he would. "Exactly, Mom. Someone had to take charge. Well, you weren't yourself. You were becoming a liability, especially with those important clients Monique and I were trying to impress. We couldn't risk a scene." He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "The attic was just a temporary, safe solution. Out of sight, out of mind, so you could rest and we could manage things. It was for the best, really. You see that now, don't you?" The tiny recorder in my pocket captured his smug justification, his admission that I was a liability, his chilling, out of sight, out of mind. The best he spoke of was clearly his own. Monique was next, a more challenging quarry with her sharp eyes and suspicious nature. I approached her under the guise of needing her modern expertise. "Monique, dear," I said, finding her scrolling through designer websites in my living room, a look of distaste on her face as she surveyed Robert's favorite armchair. "Since my episode, I've been thinking, maybe this old house is a bit much. You have such wonderful taste. If Andre were to take over the running of things more formally, what would you envision for it?" Her eyes lit up, a predatory gleam I knew all too well. "Oh, Gloria," she purred, launching into an enthusiastic monologue. "This place has potential buried under all this clutter." She gestured vaguely at my cherished belongings. "We'd open up this whole area, of course. Modern, clean lines. Perfect for the kind of entertaining Andre needs to do. That weekend when we had those people over, it was just a trial run, really, to see how we could make the space work once we have more freedom. It's all about upgrading, Gloria. Moving forward." Her callous dismissal of my life's treasures, her admission that the party weekend was a trial run for her takeover, all safely stored. The phrase, "once Andre is fully in control," echoed with a chilling finality. Kayla, my sweet, conflicted Kayla, was the easiest and the hardest. Easiest because her guilt was a palpable thing, a raw nerve I could gently press. Hardest because a part of me still ached for the loving daughter I remembered. I found her one afternoon staring out the kitchen window, a mournful expression on her face. "Kayla, honey," I said softly, placing a trembling hand on her arm. The tremble wasn't entirely feigned this time. "That weekend, in the attic. I try to piece it together, but it's like a bad dream. Was I truly so much trouble for you all?" Tears immediately welled in her eyes. "Oh, Mama," she choked out, turning to hug me, a hug I endured with a frozen heart. It wasn't like that. I mean, Andre and Monique, they were just so insistent. They said it was for your own good, that you needed to be kept safe after your fall, that you were agitated. I told them it felt wrong, Mama, I really did. But they just steamrolled me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I felt so awful leaving you up there. I heard you calling out. But Andre said not to go up, that it would only make you more worked up. I'm so sorry, Mama. It was horrible, but I didn't know what else to do. Her tearful confession, her admission of hearing me, her fear of her brother and sister-in-law, it was all there. The most heartbreaking recording of them all, perhaps because it was laced with a genuine, albeit weak, remorse. Night after night, I would transfer the audio files to a secure folder on an old laptop Robert had owned, listening back with a grim satisfaction that warred with the fresh waves of pain each recording brought. Their voices, stripped of pretense, filled my lonely hours, Andre's arrogant justifications, Monique's cold calculations, Kayla's tearful self-preservations. It was a sickening chorus of their betrayal. Maintaining the facade of a broken, forgetful old woman was exhausting. There were days I wanted to scream at their patronizing remarks, to throw their insincere offerings of help back in their faces. But the thought of the upcoming family reunion, the vision of their stunned, horrified faces as their own words condemned them, kept me going. I had even, with feigned enthusiasm for one last big family get-together, insisted it be held at my house in my backyard as was tradition. They'd readily agreed, no doubt seeing it as another sign of my docile acceptance of their control. They thought they were managing me, humoring the old lady. They had no idea I was the one pulling the strings, patiently weaving the net that was about to ensnare them all. The recordings were my ammunition, carefully catalogued, edited only for brevity where their self-serving ramblings went on too long, but never for content. Their true selves, captured in their own damning words. The reunion was just 3 weeks away. And I, Gloria, the frail, confused mother, was ready. The day of the annual summer family reunion dawned bright and unseasonably warm, a stark contrast to the icy resolve that had settled in my heart. For weeks, I had moved through my days like a phantom, my outward frailty a carefully constructed mask hiding the meticulous preparations for this very afternoon. My old laptop, Robert's trusty machine, held the damning symphony of my children's betrayal, each audio file a nail for their collective coffin. The small Bluetooth speaker I'd bought, for listening to my gospel music in the garden, dears, I told them with a wan smile, was fully charged and ready. My backyard, usually a source of such simple joy with its blooming roses and shady oak tree, was gradually filling with the boisterous sounds of the Adebayo clan. Aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews. They came bearing covered dishes, folding chairs, and the easy laughter of people anticipating a pleasant afternoon of food and fellowship. This reunion was my tradition, started with Robert years ago, a day to reinforce the bonds of family. This year it would serve a very different purpose. Andre, Monique, and Kayla arrived together, a united front of performative concern. Andre carried a large, ostentatious fruit basket. Just to make sure you're getting your vitamins, Mom, he boomed, loud enough for nearby relatives to hear his filial devotion. Monique, dressed in a crisp linen dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension, air-kissed me, her eyes flicking around the yard with a critical gaze, no doubt assessing how soon she could update the landscaping. Kayla offered a hesitant hug, her eyes full of a familiar anxious guilt that she quickly masked with a bright, false smile. They fussed over my chair, offered to fetch me plates of food I didn't want, their every gesture a patronizing reminder of the role they had cast for me, the dottery old mother, easily managed, soon to be forgotten. I let them, playing my part, my heart a steady, cold drum against my ribs. As the afternoon wore on, as plates were filled and refilled, as children shrieked with laughter playing tag on the lawn, I watched them. I watched my son Andre hold court with his uncles, boasting about some recent business deal, all confident bluster. I watched Monique charm a group of my nieces with tales of her latest charity committee, her voice smooth and cultured. I watched Kayla sit quietly on the edge of a conversation, picking at her food, her gaze flitting nervously towards me now and then. They were so comfortable in their deceit, so secure in their belief that their little secret about the attic was safe, that their mother was a broken, compliant shell. Finally, as the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the yard, I knew it was time. I asked my nephew David, a good-hearted young man with a booming laugh, to help me get everyone's attention. Quiet down, everyone. Quiet down. David called out. Aunt Gloria has something she'd like to say. A hush fell over the 30-odd family members. All eyes turned to me. I rose slowly, leaning perhaps a little more heavily on my cane than strictly necessary, my small digital recorder clutched in one hand, the Bluetooth speaker already discreetly placed on the picnic table beside me. Andre, Monique, and Kayla exchanged slightly uneasy glances. What was the old woman up to now? Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice soft but clear, carrying in the sudden stillness. It warms my heart to see so many generations of our family gathered here, in the home Robert and I built with so much love. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over them, finally resting on my 3 children. This year I wanted to do something a little different. I have a special, family tribute I'd like to share. A testament really to my loving children, Andre, Kayla, and my dear daughter-in-law, Monique, and their unique approach to family devotion. A flicker of genuine alarm now crossed Andre's face. Monique's smile tightened. Kayla looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. With a steady hand I pressed play. The first voice to fill the shocked silence of my backyard was Andre's, smug and self-important. Someone had to take charge, Mom. You weren't yourself. You were becoming a liability. The attic was just a temporary, safe solution. Out of sight, out of mind, so you could rest and we could manage things. It was for the best, really. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled family. I saw my sister Carol stare at Andre, her mouth agape. Andre himself had gone rigid, his face turning a sickly shade of pale. Then came Monique's cool, disdainful tones. Honestly, Gloria, this place has potential buried under all this clutter. That weekend when we had those people over. It was just a trial run, really, to see how we could make the space work once we have more freedom. It's all about upgrading, Gloria. Moving forward. Once Andre is fully in control. Monique shot to her feet, her face a mask of fury. What is this? Turn that off, Gloria. This is an invasion of privacy. You're twisting things. But her voice was drowned out by the murmurs of disbelief and disgust from our relatives. And then Kayla's tearful, choked confession filled the air. Oh, Mama. It wasn't like that. I mean, Andre and Monique, they were just so insistent. They said it was for your own good. I told them it felt wrong, Mama, I really did. I felt so awful leaving you up there. I heard you calling out, but Andre said not to go up. I'm so sorry, Mama. The recordings continued, snippet after damning snippet. Andre callously discussing the value of the house as if I were already gone. Monique complaining about my old-fashioned ways, being an embarrassment. Kayla admitting they'd locked the attic door. Each word, each justification, each moment of casual cruelty was laid bare for all to hear. When the last recording faded, an absolute, bone-chilling silence descended upon the backyard. No one moved. No one spoke. Then my brother-in-law, old Uncle James, his face like thunder, slowly rose to his feet. He turned his gaze upon Andre, then Monique, then Kayla, who was now openly sobbing into her hands. Andre, Uncle James said, his voice low and dangerous. You locked your own mother, Gloria, in an attic. Andre tried to bluster, his face a mottled red. It was a misunderstanding. She wasn't well. We were concerned. Concerned. My sister Carol's voice cut through the air like a whip. That's not concern I heard on those tapes, Andre. That was greed and contempt. How could you? After everything Gloria has done for you. The dam of family decorum broke. Voices rose in outrage, accusations flew. Andre stammered. Monique tried to hiss denials that no one believed, her carefully constructed composure shattering. Kayla just wept, a broken, pitiable figure. They were surrounded not by loving family but by a jury of their peers, their faces etched with disgust and condemnation. I stood there watching the edifice of their lies crumble into dust. There was a bitter taste in my mouth, the taste of a mother's sorrow for the children she had lost, not to death, but to their own avarice and cruelty. But beneath it a stronger, cleaner feeling was rising, the taste of justice. My performance was over. Theirs, it seemed, was just beginning under the harsh, unforgiving spotlight of truth. The silence that followed the last damning word from my recorder was heavier than any stone, broken only by Kayla's ragged, hysterical sobs. Andre stood frozen, his face a ghastly mural of purple and white, his usual bluster utterly deflated. Monique, for once, was speechless, her perfectly made-up face contorted into an ugly mask of disbelief and fury as she glared at me, then at the shocked faces surrounding them. The festive atmosphere of the family reunion had evaporated, replaced by a courtroom chill. Uncle James, his voice resonating with the quiet authority of the family patriarch he had become since Robert passed, was the first to truly break the spell. "Andre," he said, his gaze unwavering, "Monique, Kayla, I think you three owe your mother, and every single one of us here, an explanation. Though frankly, after what we've just heard, I can't imagine any explanation would suffice for such calculated cruelty." That opened the floodgates. My sister Carol, usually so placid, rounded on Monique. "You scheming, heartless woman. To treat Gloria like that in her own home." My nieces and nephews, who had grown up adoring me, looked at their cousins Andre and Kayla with expressions of utter revulsion. Andre tried to stammer out some defense, something about misunderstandings and mother not being herself, but his words were drowned out by a chorus of disgust. Monique, ever the fighter, attempted a venomous retort aimed at me. "You twisted old crone, you set us up." But her own husband, Andre, actually flinched away from her, the public exposure apparently enough to momentarily sever even their toxic alliance. Kayla simply crumpled further into her chair, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. It was a terrible, ugly scene, the unraveling of a family's carefully constructed facade. But amidst the chaos, something extraordinary happened. One by one my relatives came to me. My cousin Rose, her eyes blazing with indignation, took my hand. "Gloria, you come stay with me tonight. You shouldn't be alone after this." My nephew David, the one who had helped me with the microphone, put a protective arm around my shoulder. "We've got you, Aunt Gloria. Always." Offers of support, of outrage on my behalf, of love, genuine love, enveloped me like a warm, protective cloak. They saw the truth, they understood, and they stood with me. In that moment, I knew I wasn't the lonely old woman Marcus had cursed Imani to be, nor the one Andre and Monique had tried to make me. I was Gloria, matriarch of a flawed but ultimately loyal family, and I was not alone. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of activity, but it was a purposeful, cleansing activity. Andre, Monique, and Kayla became pariahs. The story of their actions, especially the attic imprisonment, spread like wildfire through our extended family and, inevitably, our community. Andre's business associates, some of whom had attended that fateful party, suddenly found him less appealing. Monique's charity committees quietly distanced themselves from her. The shame was a palpable thing, clinging to them, isolating them far more effectively than any locked attic door. For me, there was a profound sense of vindication, yes, but it was a heavy, somber victory. These were still my children, the babies I had rocked to sleep, the teenagers whose heartbreaks I had mended. To see them so utterly broken and disgraced brought a deep ache to my mother's heart, even as the survivor in me acknowledged the stark justice of it all. The weight of their betrayal, the years of feeling diminished and disrespected, finally began to lift. I felt lighter, as if I could finally breathe deeply again. With the unwavering support of Uncle James and my sister Carol, I consulted a lawyer. We discussed the unlawful confinement, the emotional distress. While I had no desire for a protracted, messy court battle that would only prolong the agony, taking legal steps to formally document their actions and to secure my assets felt essential. My will was immediately rewritten, power of attorney documents updated. Andre and Monique were excised from my life and my legacy as cleanly as a surgeon removes a diseased organ. They would inherit nothing from me but the consequences of their own actions. Kayla was a different matter. She came to me a week after the reunion, alone, her face pale and tear-streaked, stripped of all pretense. She didn't offer excuses, didn't try to minimize her role. She just sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd eaten countless childhood meals, and confessed her weakness, her fear, her profound shame and regret. "I know sorry isn't enough, Mama," she whispered, her voice raw. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know. I will live with what I did, what I allowed to happen for the rest of my life." Her pain seemed genuine, her remorse deep. But trust, once shattered so completely, is not easily mended. "Kayla," I told her, my voice gentle but firm, "what you children did cut me to the core. Forgiveness is a long road and I don't know where it leads yet. Perhaps one day, if your actions show true and lasting change, we might find a different path. But for now, I need to heal. And you need to figure out who you are without your brother and his wife dictating your conscience." I left the door ajar for her, a tiny sliver of hope, but made it clear the journey back would be hers to walk, and it would be long and arduous. My home, once a place of creeping dread, began to feel like mine again. I reclaimed it room by room. I filled it with flowers, with music Robert would have loved, with the laughter of friends and family who now visited more often than ever, their respect for me renewed and deepened. The attic door remained unlocked, a silent testament to a nightmare survived. Life settled into a new rhythm, one of peace and quiet dignity. The old, troublesome Gloria was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth, who had faced down betrayal and emerged not just intact but stronger. My spirit, which they had tried so hard to crush, was unbent. I was Gloria, and I was finally, truly, gloriously free. The future was mine to write on my own terms, surrounded by love that was honest and true. And that, I realized, was the most perfect revenge of all.